You're 27, standing in a laundromat on a Tuesday afternoon, and the owner is showing you where the water shutoff valve is. Like that's the most important thing in the world. It might be. The place smells like fabric softener and hot metal. 18 washers, 12 dryers, fluorescent lights, one of them flickering in the back corner near the folding table. The owner is 61. He's selling because his knees are done and his son wants nothing to do with quarters and lint traps. The number on the table is $420,000. His stated seller's discretionary earnings, the actual cash the business throws off, is $120,000 a year. You've spent 3 weeks with an accountant confirming that number is real, not massaged, not one good month multiplied by 12. You put down $42,000. Everyone in your life has an opinion about this decision, and none of them are asking about debt service coverage ratio. Your best friend says you could be doing sales at a tech company right now. Your dad asks if you've thought this through, which is his way of saying he thinks you haven't. Your girlfriend at the time doesn't say much of anything, which turns out to be its own kind of answer, and by the following spring, she's your ex-girlfriend. Nobody says congratulations. Nobody throws you a party for buying a laundromat. The SBA loan is $378,000. 10 years and your first year, your accountant runs the real math with you at his kitchen table because his office was double booked, and this felt more honest anyway. Annual debt service comes out to just over $62,000. Rent is $3,400 a month. Utilities, mostly water and gas for the dryers, run another $4,200 some months, more in the summer when everyone's doing laundry after the pool. You do the subtraction together. Revenue minus rent, minus utilities, minus debt service, minus the guy you're paying to mop, and empty the coin boxes on weekends. What's left is thin. Some months, it's uncomfortably thin. Your accountant says something you remember for years afterward. He says, "This business will either make you boring or it'll make you rich, and for a while you won't be able to tell which one is happening." He's right. You become boring. You stop going out on Thursdays because Thursday is when you reconcile the coin totals. You learn to fix a dryer belt yourself because a repair call is $180 and you can do it in 40 minutes with a YouTube video and a socket wrench. You start recognizing regulars by their laundry, not their faces. The woman who always does 5 loads on Sunday morning. The guy who brings in a duvet every 6 weeks like clockwork. At 29, a machine floods the back corner at 11 p.m. on a Friday. You're already asleep. Your attendant calls you, panicked, water pooling toward the electrical outlets. You drive over in sweatpants and spend 2 hours with a wet, dry vac you keep in your trunk specifically for this reason, because this isn't the first time. You get home at 2 a.m. smelling like standing water and detergent. You sit in your car in the driveway for a minute before going inside, not because you're upset, just tired in a way that has nothing to do with hours slept. This is the part nobody tells you about owning something boring. It's not romantic. It's a socket wrench in your trunk. It's a phone that can ring at 11 p.m. because you're the only person whose name is on the lease. But there's a number sitting quietly underneath all of it, and the number doesn't care how tired you are. It just keeps compounding. At 31, you refinance, rates have moved, and your loan officer, a woman named Patricia, who's handled your account since year 1, walks you through a new structure that shaves your monthly debt service down by almost $700. You use the difference to put a new sign out front and reseal the parking lot, the kind of unglamorous capital expenditure nobody posts about online, but that quietly keeps a business from looking tired. Foot traffic ticks up, not dramatically. Nothing about this business has ever moved dramatically. It moves the way water finds the lowest point, slow and certain, and after a while you stop expecting fireworks and start trusting the drift instead. Your friend from the tech sales job posts a photo from a company retreat in Cabo. You're elbow deep in a coin mechanism that's been jamming quarters for 2 days. You don't feel envy exactly. You feel a kind of parallel track awareness, like watching a train on a different set of rails heading somewhere you used to think you wanted to go. That same year, your accountant asks if you've thought about what happens if you got hit by a bus. Not morbidly, just practically. You realize you don't have an operating agreement that spells out what happens to the business if you suddenly can't run it. You spend a weekend with a lawyer instead of at a barbecue you'd been invited to, drafting language you hope nobody ever actually needs. You file it in a drawer and forget about it. Mostly, the way you file away a smoke detector battery you hope you never have to think about again. This is the part of ownership nobody puts in the pitch. Insurance riders, succession clauses, a folder in a drawer you update every couple of years and hope stays boring forever. At 33, you buy a second location, not because you're chasing scale for its own sake, but because you've learned something in 6 years that most people never learn about a business until it's too late. Once you understand the real cost structure of something, once you can predict its bad months and its good months with something close to precision, you're no longer gambling. You're just executing. The second laundromat costs $310,000. You put 15% down this time, not 10%, because Patricia tells you your debt service coverage ratio matters more than your ego, and you listen to her the way you've learned to listen to anyone who's been right before. You hire a manager for location one so you can split your attention. This is the first time in 6 years you've paid someone else to make decisions you used to make yourself, and it feels less like delegation and more like a small, quiet grief. You liked knowing every machine by its sound. Training her takes longer than you expect, not because she's slow, because you realize how much of what you know was never written down anywhere. It lived in your hands and your gut. 10 years of pattern recognition you have to translate into sentences for the first time. Which vendor to call first when the water heater dies? Which regulars need a little grace on a bounced payment and which ones are testing you? You write it all down over a few weekends, and by the time you're done, you have something that looks almost like a manual, the closest thing this business has ever had to a blueprint. At 34, something happens that has nothing to do with either laundromat directly. You're at a wedding, standing near the bar, talking to someone you went to college with who now works in corporate finance and makes, by your estimate, somewhere around $145,000 a year plus bonus. He asks what you do now, and you tell him, and you watch his face do the thing faces do when they're trying to be polite about something they've privately decided is beneath them. "Oh, that's great," he says. "Good for you. Steady work." You don't correct him. You don't mention that between two locations, your combined net cash flow last year was just north of $230,000, more than double what he makes, with none of the layoffs he's quietly worried about, none of the return to office mandate he complained about 20 minutes ago, none of the ladder he's still climbing with no idea if there's actually a rung at the top. You just say, "Yeah, it's steady," and you let him believe whatever's more comfortable for him to believe. You've stopped needing people to understand the number. You just need the number to be true. At 35, your original attendant, the one who called you at 11 p.m. about the flood 6 years earlier, gives his notice. He's been saving, watching you, asking careful questions for 2 years about SBA loans and DSCR and how you found your first deal. He's found his own laundromat, 2 towns over, $280,000 asking price. You spend an evening with him at your kitchen table, the same kind of conversation your accountant once had with you, except now you're the one holding the pen, walking someone else through what real sellers' discretionary earnings actually means versus what a broker wants it to mean. You feel something you don't entirely have a name for. Not pride exactly. Something more like watching a thing you built quietly propagate itself into someone else's life. He leaves with a folder of your notes and a phone number he's allowed to call anytime. You don't feel like you lost an employee. You feel like you accidentally started something. At 36, The market shifts under your feet in a way you didn't see coming. A large regional chain opens a location 4 blocks from your first laundromat, brand new machines, app-based payment, a coffee bar in the corner. For 3 months, your revenue at that location drops almost 18%. You don't panic, not because you're calm by nature, but because 9 years of this business has taught you that panic is expensive and patience is free. You look at your actual numbers instead of your fear, your regulars, the Sunday 5-load woman, the duvet guy, they're still coming. What you're losing is the walk-by traffic, the people who'll go wherever's newest. You don't compete on shiny. You can't. Not against a chain with venture money behind it. You compete on the thing you've always had: reliability, a machine that doesn't eat quarters, an owner who still shows up when something floods at 11 p.m. Revenue stabilizes by month 5, not fully recovered, but close enough that your DSCR stays comfortably above 1.5. The chain closes that location 11 months later. Venture money, it turns out, is not patient the way a decade of quarters is patient. You drive past the empty storefront a few weeks after they clear out the machines. There's a moment where you feel something almost like sympathy for whoever ran the numbers on that expansion and got them wrong. You know what it costs to be wrong in this business. You just got lucky enough or stubborn enough to survive the year it happened to you. That winter, the original owner, the man with the bad knees who sold you location 1 a decade ago, calls you out of nowhere. He's 71 now. He asks how the place is doing, half checking in, half something else you can hear underneath the question. You tell him honestly, 2 locations, comfortably profitable, still smells exactly the way it did the day he handed you the keys. He goes quiet for a second, then says his son finally asked him last year what the business would have been worth if he'd kept it. The son's a consultant now, does something with data nobody in the family fully understands, makes good money, but apparently good enough money to start wondering, a decade too late, what he walked away from. You don't say anything smug. There's nothing smug to say. You just tell the old man the place is still standing, still humming, still exactly as boring and exactly as reliable as the day he sold it to you. He sounds satisfied by that in a way that has nothing to do with money. At 37, on a Tuesday afternoon that looks like nothing, you sit down to do what you do every quarter. Pull the real numbers, not the ones that feel good, the ones that are true, combined. Both locations, after debt service, after your manager's salary, after every repair and every slow month and every dollar of reinvestment, your net worth, businesses plus the equity you've built, plus a retirement account you almost forgot to keep funding because the business always felt more real than a number on a brokerage app, comes out to just over $1.4 million. You sit with that number, the way you sat in your car after the flood at 29. Quietly. Not euphoric. Something steadier than euphoric. You think about the wedding, about the polite, dismissive face of the guy in corporate finance. You think about your dad's careful question 10 years ago. Have you thought this through? You think about the ex-girlfriend who didn't say much of anything, and you genuinely, honestly hope she's doing well, wherever she is, because you don't carry that one with any weight anymore. You think about the flickering fluorescent light in the back corner of location 1, the one that was broken the day you signed the papers. You fixed it in your second week. It's never gone out again. 10 years ago, you bought something nobody wanted to talk about at parties, a business built on quarters and water bills and a smell you can still identify with your eyes closed. It was never going to make a good story at a dinner table, but it made a true one, and somewhere around year 8 or 9, without ever announcing itself, that stopped mattering to you completely. You close the laptop, you drive to location 2, because a dryer's been running hot and you want to look at it yourself. Not because you have to anymore, but because some habits you built when you had nothing are the same habits that made sure you'd eventually have everything.